just roll with it.
Let me I'll fill you in on like what I know about you and lesser known in general, and then you fill in all the gaps. This is how I used to do things. And then I had people be like, "You what you said you know about me is totally wrong." So I stopped doing it that way. But it's more like whenever I came to know about you and lesser known really came about whenever it, Adrian Kalarick had a comic called The Sitter, and he and I were used to we had the same publisher, Scout, back when Scout was a thing, and so we became connected that way. And I remember really liking his comic Trakovi, and so whenever we reconnected again, I was like, "Who you going out? Who you gonna go with for your next comic?" And he said lesser known comics. And at the time, I was like, "That's a great publisher name." I was like, "That's genius for all kinds of SEO reasons and just in general." And so then, and that's where I was introduced to lesser known, and then I started to follow you in on social medias and stuff like that. Um, but now it seems like you've grown exponentially since then. I feel like it was at the time, it was like, maybe a couple hundred people were paying attention to it. And now I see, you've got thousands of followers, a real fan base, and these new initiatives with like your zines I guess fill me in on how you got started in comics, lesser known, and where you're at today.
Yeah, so the I'm glad that Adrian was like the entry point. I have such admiration for him, like as a creator. He is so much fun to talk to. His work is so good. The Where lesser known comics started out was actually, yeah, during the pandemic. I was like everybody, right? We're like, what are we gonna do with like this time in the house? And I had a friend who was working on a children's book, and I said, "Oh, how do you work? How do you find illustrators and all that?" And I had just began like reading comics again. It was kind of like a epiphany, like when I was like, in my late 30s, being like, "Oh, I can like afford comics." Like when I was a kid, I didn't have much money, so like, I religiously watched, every like Spider-Man, Saturday morning cartoon, X-Men. Was always like a huge fan. X-Men has always been my jam. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like getting unlimited, like deleted scenes of all the things, right? So I was like, oh, maybe I can make a comic. And I started working with a bunch of artists, thinking, oh, I'm going to pick one. I'm going to make my comic book with one. And of course, like I fell in love with like a bunch of them. And I'm like, we're making three comics. So I started working on that, and they're posting to Instagram, and people are like, hey, can you help me make my comic? And I don't know anything about publishing at the time. I still arguably don't really know much about publishing, but like, I'm like, sure, like, how hard can it be? It's like that scene in Dumb and Dumber where they're like picking up all the hitchhikers, like, pick them
Yeah.
up, like, yeah. And so uh, that was like the first bit of it, right? Okay, so now we have a bunch of people who are all kind of each bringing an audience themselves, and they're all trying to make comics. None of us know what we're doing. And I think like around 2021, 2022, we hit a lot of like peaks and valleys where we're just like, oh, like we're trying to do big Kickstarter launches, and we just don't have like the apparatus to do it. Like I don't, have a way of like keeping things on schedule. I don't know project management. I don't know like the first thing about all that. So then I was approached by a few creators who said, well, I don't need you to like schedule anything for me. I just want the megaphone of like lesser known comics. Like I want to be able to post on social media and like, so instead of it being like just like creator owned, like it's really like creator driven or creator led. Um, and that really struck me because like we were able to decentralize like execution like hugely, right? Like people are just really doing what they need. We have a creator huddle. They're coming and asking for specific resources, but we don't have to manage like the whole product. They say, oh, hey, I need a letterer, or hey, like I don't know how to build my campaign, like little things, right? Like, oh, I can help you with that. I can't help you with
Yeah.
all of it, but I can help you with little things. And I can pair you with people who are good at certain things. Um, so that worked really well, and we kept on that, but we were still like trying to do a lot of things that traditional publishers do. We were trying to get into stores, and we were trying to have like an online website and stuff like that. And I have to like manage inventory. We have to figure out print and all that kind of stuff. We're just not really good at that. So in the newest iteration of what Lesser Known Comics is we're really much more of like an art collective. People own their own, inventory. They have their own sales platforms, whether it's through Big Cartel or some of them are using Comics One's new print on demand service. So there's a lot of different ways in which they're solving that. Um, and we're focusing on um, our creator huddles being like a place where people can come and get best practices and exchange resources, and kind of understand, how to, best grow. We're using the zine as a way of finding entry points for like new creators to just come in, hey, get published in a zine, try working on an anthology. Okay, like as you rub elbows with these people in lesser known comics, we'll get you to a place where we can get you, your comic made and get you like con ready, so you can do conventions or whatever you need.
Yeah.
And that, um, and then, the last part, is really, like preservation of the craft. There's a lot of, um, things that we can do, um, by virtue of having so many creators. There's probably over 200, contributors, like lesser known comics contributors, I would call them. Those are people who are, doing stuff in anthologies and zines and stuff like that. There's about like 50 or so that I would say are like greenlit, like LKC creators that can, that like they don't need any oversight from me to um, put lesser known comics on their stuff or to like represent the brand or to go out there and do whatever. Like they can spin up a lesser known comics publication without like any oversight or whatever. And that's what we're trying to grow is like um, people who not only can make their own books but then also create opportunities for others. um, I'll use Apollo City Comics is like a really good example of that. They were like
Oh,
a little indie, studio with us, and then they were like, "No, we're doing our own thing." They spun off, and they're doing so much more than like we could have ever imagined, and it's really great. We have a really good working relationship where, um, I say, "Hey, I don't think I think you'd be better off to actually work with Apollo City on this because they're a really good, publisher, or maybe it's Cosmic Lion, or maybe it's the anime guys or manga guys, Moonlayer Studios, whoever, right? And that's kind of like what Adrian's doing with Three Press. He's
yeah.
still part of the lesser known comics community, but he's got Three Press, and that's his, and like we like really see that as like a partner publisher.
Man, you have the wheels spinning in my head because there's just that's like exactly where I have been at in a sense of, and it makes me just see that. So it's like the, the big thing with every creator that I hear, because like I started a Sacco Press last year, which is essentially the same thing as you. I don't have that many resources. I have some knowledge ability about certain things, a small network, um, and you get, and it's like in reality, from a publisher's business perspective, what we need is completed work that is of professional quality. And getting that is like someone who has the ability to do that for the most part is either like very well established, and what they want from a publisher is an established fan base and a path to more distribution than they could. Normally, what people want is on the comic shelves. So they want in the catalogs to where comic shops can, put it on the shelves. So, but what a publisher needs to do that is you basically need a lot of content. You need to be able to consistently put out work because the distributors won't work with you unless you have enough content to steady go out and it meets the quality specs. So it's like as a publisher, you have to be able to onboard a lot of quality talent that's completed and then package it together to bring it to the distributor. And the hard part is like for those of us in the middle, is like we need to get like more like we can get the content but maybe not fast enough, or we can get or we can get a lot of people that want to publish comics but their quality is not up to snuff or they can't get it out fast enough. And when you talk to the creators, they're basically like, I will get it out fast enough. I will bring it up to the quality standards as long as I know you'll publish it and you'll get it on the shelves. Like they need the approval and like the stamp that says like we will publish you and we'll get you on shelves as long as you can meet these metrics. But you can't give them that guarantee until you like they have some kind of something completed, at least one, two, or three issues of an arc. And that's where I always was at the hang up because like you'd be like people send you great pitches, great creators are involved, and it'd be like, okay, yeah, I can publish you, and they'd be like, well, what does that mean? And it's like, well, not much, honestly. It's like I can get the megaphone out there, like you said. That might get you some sales, but I don't have the distribution route unless you can guarantee me, along with three or four other creators this month, that they can do the same thing. And so it becomes, instead of a normal business relationship, it becomes a collective. And just like you were saying with Apollo City, it's like I'm now just being like, you know what? You're probably with this content and that quality, you should reach out to, ASAP Imagination or lesser known comics. I have the contacts. I'll send you the email. I will connect you. Because it's like none of us are in this to get rich. It's not like me being like, "Ooh, you have the IP that's gonna make me the money. Like I'm gonna hold on to you, and no one else can have you, or something like that." Instead, it's more like, "This is cool. Like this is so cool that there's somebody else is actually like better for this, and I will connect you so that we can all like figure this out together." Like and I feel like now, especially like with your saying Adrian's thing, my thing, your thing, there is like a some way to where it's like that the weird gaps that we all had of like we need the quality content and we need it completed or close to completed so that we can schedule it out so that we can then it's like if we can collectively come together and even not as like one brand or something like that, just figure out the scheduling and not necessarily like, oh, I need to map it out, but just almost like if we are all connected in a certain way, there it might be able to streamline things easier, and we and almost just like filter out to where it's just like you're with your zine initiative. Like if you're at this level and you're just trying to get started, let's get your short story into lesser known's anthology this month or whatever. If that works out, like expand that into um, a longer zine, and let's put that out with Apollo City. And then when that happens, if that starts to build an audience, like get a whole graphic novel ready, and let's reach out to whatever. Like it's almost like I don't know what you call it other than a collective, but it seems like that's what things are now. It's just not like official. But I've joked about this in the past where like comics are very clicky. You're in this click or that click. And I'm trying to break that mold.
Yeah, no, I think that's certainly worth it. One of the people I always use as an example for new creators. So we have a writer that we work with, Sarah Cook, and she's done stuff for us. She's really active in Comics Tribe. They're the ones who do the comics launch program. Um, Negative Space Comics. That writer's platform is that's how she was first introduced to us. She won their contest. She works with
Nice.
she works with Mad Cave. She won their talent. It's just like she's making small, digestible works and putting them everywhere she possibly can, and she's a part of every click. Like
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm like that. That is really the way to go. The thing about comics, like the current state of comics, is we don't. The reason why soccer and football and baseball are so popular is that everyone grows up and they did it, right? They played rec, they did it, maybe they did it in
Yeah.
college or whatever. Um, in addition to that, the talent development trajectory for that, there's programs. There's always a program to find your way from amateur to farm league to professional, right? Um, the talent development is not something that the big publishers really can do anymore with the business model they have. It's just not baked into what these people who graduate with MBAs like are told, right?
Yeah.
Third quarter profits don't have talent development baked into them. But that's where we can step in and provide like a very solid um, leg up for creators, because having a pitch and having an idea and getting someone to draw it for you, even if it's 4 pages, like your first 4 page, like mini comic zine submission, you're going to learn so much. You know,
Mm.
you're going to learn so much about um, when you first print your own ash can, right? Like, I actually have to figure out like what is it going to be printed on? Who's it, like, what am I going to pay for it? Like, oh, like it has to be in increments of 4, so I have to figure out what I'm going to do with these backfill pages. Like that's it. You discover those things for the first time, because it's wild to me um, how much people think they have ambition for things that they want like out of comics, but really don't know, who they are and where they're going. So someone come to me and say, "Oh, I want to come to lesser known comics." Okay, what are you trying to do? Where are you trying to go? I want to do a Kickstarter and I want to raise $15,000. Okay. Um, so
Okay.
so if you raise $14,999, is that a failure? They said, well, no, that's not a failure. Okay, well then, if it's 13,000, like, are you happy with that? And they're like, well, I mean, I'm like, okay. Well, what if you make 20,000, but you never want to make a comic book ever again after that, and you've alienated all your friends and family? Well, I don't want that either. Okay, so $15,000 means nothing. You have a goal out there that you put in your mind, but it actually has no bearing in reality. It actually doesn't govern whether you're going to make comics or whether you're going to be successful or not. So, what are you trying to do? you know and when we've tried to create this pipeline of going through the zines and the anthologies so that you get to mix in with folks who have been at different parts. There's people who are 18, there's people who are up to 60 years old that are making, and and you're going to hear things from them and how they define success and how they define, um like the solid footing and foundation you need to make, as a creator to be in this space. um and they start us as the publisher, we stop hearing dumb things. We start hearing a lot of wisdom from younger people, right? Who because
Yeah.
they got surrounded by people who are in it with them. They're working with them as peers, and it's maybe just for some zine, or whatever. But there's a huge benefit in that, and the maturity in which we'll be able to offer creators up to, because we had creators who published with us that ended up going and doing a publishing deal with, like, say, Mad Cave or somebody like that, and it's like, that's great. you know
Hmm.
and that creator is going to be really successful, and they're going to come back and they're going to say, hey, remember when we got that really good creator from lesser known comics? That's going to be good for the whole group.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, that's the thing is like I joke about it because you have to be a I don't know how like a way of putting it is basically like you have to work for the benefit of the good. Like we have like somebody has to do this just for the sake of the community because you're not going to make any money at it. And like it's just like the yeah, like the actual like guiding talent upward. And there's nothing against really like anybody. It's just it's a very hard industry. It's like you're trying to I always try to compare it to, you know, movies, but if you were to compare it to like that's not a good comparison. It's more like from the publisher's perspective, what actually makes money is there you're selling things if you're doing it through sales. Like comic sales are very like not that many and the margins are super thin. So it's like you have to spend a lot of money to actually print a comic, even a cheap one, even black and white and zine. It's like you're still if you're not printing very many, you're spending a lot on it. And then so if you're spending $1 to print it and you like even if you're selling that for $5, it's like, okay, so you're making $4 profit off of one comic or whatever, you know, and it's like, and I printed 10, so it's like, great, you made $40. Nobody's gonna see that as like a viable business model. Like, and then even if you you know extend it and be like, okay, well, what if we're printing 1,000 and instead of printing them for $1, we're printing them for 50 cents each. You know, just making up these numbers. Obviously, we know that those aren't accurate. It's actually even more expensive than that. But
Yeah.
it's like like the numbers to where it makes sense to anybody that's like just you know kind of a money person. It's like it never makes sense. It has to be a super high number, and then you're like, oh, what does it take to get to that level? And you go, oh, the level to make it make sense is like 100, like 10 to 100,000, and you're like, well, what sells that? And they're like, only the most known comics ever in existence, like the biggest IP that's out there that virtually anybody that comics knows, and then even people outside of comics will recognize that what sells at those numbers. And it's like so to go from the outside in to get to those numbers is it's like very rare. So from a publisher's risk, you know, reward standpoint, it's just never it never makes sense. That's why you see all these publishers are buying or licensing IP that already is successful. If you can take something that already has the 10,000, you know, audience that will buy it, then it starts to make sense. Then you can because then you can be like, okay, if I can just hire the talented creators to maintain this IP, um, well then I can just, you know, the 10,000 every month makes sense. And it's like, okay, so you have to get to that level. So as a creator-owned publisher, or the broad term of indie comics, it's like what it actually takes to be any form of true like financial advisor says it's okay to invest money in that project is outrageous and almost impossible. So we have to sort of do it for the love of the game. You can't like, and then as soon because the only thing that really is profitable are hits, and you don't know what's going to make that work. Um, I forgot where I was going on that tangent, but basically, it's just like it. My point was going to get to like you, and we are basically someone has to be the breeding grounds for what will ultimately become the people that the those that can afford to license IP, they need that talent, and there's a lot of that talent out there, and they won't give you the light, you know, any time of day until they can see what you've done and you have credibility. And a lot of times, all they need to see is one short story you've done. If you have killer pin-up cover arts, you know, all they need to see is that you can do at least some sequential art, you know, and you and like you can get out there. And I've because I've seen plenty of uh you know, super talented artists that just it is tough to when you realize how much work goes into actually creating a whole comic series. And especially if you're a writer and you're just like, oh yeah, this is easy. Like this guy, all he has to do is just draw me a page a day or whatever. You're like, oh, Is that all it takes? And yeah, good luck with that. And if you want that to be at the level that you see it in like an Image Comics, it's like there's a lot that goes into this game, and it's just cool that basically, and I think that's what's happening now as opposed to 10 years ago, is that those independent publishers are like know that that's their status is like they're probably not going. I guess I don't want to talk forever, but it's like in the past they were like, in order to stay around and be able to help all these independent creators grow, I have to own their IP and I have to rely on something becoming a hit, or I have to like, and then I have to sell that IP, option it to become a film or something else. But nowadays, I feel like you and others, it's not like you're just only doing it for the love of the game, but it's like the passion comes first and the money comes second, or in a way, or like the business side of it is known to just sort of being like, uh, we'll get there later, or something like that. Because it's just like if you jump on it with that way from the get go, I feel like it never works out. It's like you have to what's the term, like an incubator or something like that, where you
Hmm.
have to be like you're basically investing in a talent pool at almost like a, I don't know, a university or something like that.
Yeah, I've definitely described Lesser Known Comics as an incubator in many ways. You know, I think I think a lot of times people have a tendency to see a system that's not ideal and say, okay, like how do I break out of this system just for myself instead of like being part of reforming that system, you know? Because I don't want to be part of a comic book community where there's three top publishers that those are the only ones that can get their books on the shelves on time. I talked to um, I guess mid to large publishers, and they say, "Dude, it's so hard for us to get our books on time because if you're not Marvel, you're not DC, you're not Image, you're just not getting your books on the shelf on time." So we can take that as a given, and be like, "Oh, how do I get my stuff up to Image?" Or we can start building, you know, a community where we're not just incubating talent, but we're also incubating publishers that will go on to do great things. I have all the confidence in the world that you know, folks like Adrian can grow Three Press, Apollo City can grow, Rat Brain Zine, Moonlayer Studios. They all are going to do things that Lesser Known Comics was never capable of, and I hope we grow like five, six, seven more like and I hope that keeps sprouting. I think that uh, eventually, the other part too is those top three are kind of chasing a broken business model in terms of like the issues, like through distribution and stuff like that. I mean,
Mm,
that's that's on life support in itself. So,
yeah.
you know, um, I think we're going to see a focus on graphic novels, and I think we're going to see them being indie graphic novels being right there in bookstores, but not bookstores in the way we know them, right? Like, you go to places like the Great Lakes region and stuff like that, and you see it's comic book stores that also have like craft beer and game nights and all these.
Yeah.
It's not the comic book store from The Simpsons, right? Where just the cranky guy behind the glass,
Yeah.
it's just like don't touch that, Um, I want to prepare for that, rather than try and chase, the decay of the old, business model.
I have talked to people about this before to where I'm like, yeah, the way we consume comics has changed. Whenever I was a kid, it wasn't really comic shops. It was just like you got them from the cigar shop or the local grocery store. I mean, I'm not so old that I was like before supermarkets, but it was still very common for you to just have like even in the suburbs, like just a neighborhood shop that wasn't like all groceries. It wasn't like a 7-Eleven. There was no gas. It was just like bubble gum and comics and like cigarettes and stuff like that. And I've talked about like maybe and you gave me an idea earlier where you're saying the reason we all are into soccer and football is we've been like kind of groomed into it being everywhere. We all play it for free, and then we're like, it is like there are going to, and especially seeing it like the comic shops, to where it's like comics as a collectible and graphic novels as an actual like entertainment form are kind of separate things. And even though they're in the same shop, it's like the people that are there are not always aligned. And I do see it to where it is more like, uh, yeah, like you might go to a more a retro or just something like maybe even like manga cafes start becoming a thing, or like there's people that are playing Pokemon and Magic and cards and all that stuff, and that people are integrating Warhammer 40K, and then you might be able to get your comic in there, or weed shops or something like that, to where you're just sort of implementing comics associated with um, another subculture that's related to entertainment or nerdum or whatever. And because everything about retail shops is changing, like everybody's pivoting to be like, this isn't making me like working quite the same way. I mean, even movie theaters, like it's just like the models of everything are sort of expanding and pivoting, and there might be some kind of magic place to where comics end up being like that, like this is where the real fan base is again, or just like putting it out there is like putting it into, and just like you're saying, if you have it as sort of like local classes and stuff like that, all art, I have art collectives in my neighborhood that people want to do pottery and yoga or whatever, learn how to make crystal bowls sing or whatever, and you just add in making comics to that bundle.
Yeah, these are my favorite. Let me see if I got one here. Oh yeah. So, you know, I I got this at Baltimore Comic Con, and there's one of those. Like take the single sheet of paper and make these.
Yeah,
Um, Having those, like, yeah, more kids making those in school. You know, um, Making those in their art classes. Yeah, like your local tattoo artists, also having this, like one of these
yeah, yeah,
on their shelf, right? Um, I think that's what get because you know comics are kind of like garlic, right? Where like people are like, oh, I don't like garlic. You're like, you don't know what you don't like. You just haven't had
yeah,
it prepared for you well enough, you
yeah,
know. Because once you show it to them, once you discuss the work that goes there, oh my gosh, um, and comics have the ability to tell stories in a medium that no other medium can do, right? Like the uh, things that things won't work on the screen the same way that they're going to work in the comics. You're jumping out of the
yeah,
panels, and and uh, so I think when you grow the amount of, because that's part of it too, like with the zine, I want people who are, oh, I do webtoons, but I've never had anything like actually printed on paper. Like, yes, come on, make a zine, right? I have somebody,
yeah,
oh, I just do fan art. What do you mean you just do fan art? You're making art. Like, come on, like get in the zine. Like I hope that that's kind of the gateway drug, because just the same way as like how many people who go to concerts, that used to be in a band, like,
yeah,
that's um sometimes people say it like defeatist, where they're like, oh, only people who read comic books are people who make comic books. And it's like, well, most people who like obsess about football played football in high school, like,
True, yeah.
yeah. So,
The obsessive people might be like that.
hey, can you say hello?
Hi.
Hey, I'm doing a call. Okay, can you go back with Mama? Thanks, sweetie. Sorry.
Hey, at least I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
My either my daughter or my cat will make an interruption most of the time.
How many little ones you got?
I've got two. I've got a 2 year old and an 8 year old and a 9 year old cat. No, sorry, the cat's a year younger. He's 7.
Right on. Yeah, I got a 6 and a 4 and a puppy that's right in between. Not a puppy, a dog. But he was a puppy when we got him.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, we're basically right in the exact same boat.
Yeah.
Um, I guess what's like a typical do you have sort of a lineup for 2026 of titles that Lesser Known's going to release? Do you and like how do you have a catalog or like like how do you sort of get your new titles out there and like what's kind of your main if it's not like sort of the traditional distribution model, what is your sort of model of like your books that come out of, like if I were to sign with you, what would I expect kind of, the general plan to be with any individual title?
Yeah, I think the big thing, this is one of the reasons why we focus so much on the zine this year. Um, so um, I've seen a lot of people pursue distribution thinking it's going to do something for them that it's most likely not going to do. Um, I think I think for this next 5 years, I think print on demand distribution is going to be the huge upsetter. So if you think about what like Global Comics and Comics One are going to do, they're going to say, "Hey, just put your digital comic on our platform," and then someone can say, "Buy the physical copy." They click the button, and it's going to show up to their, you know. So what do you need the comic book store for? Um,
Mhm.
that's Comic book stores are going to have to do something additional to bring a value added besides we will deliver you a book. You know, I think and don't get me wrong, I think comic stores are hugely important. Comic stores is like the last bastion of like you can go to somebody and they know everything about that
Yeah.
topic, right? There's no
Mhm.
there's no like going to the hardware store anymore and there's like that 1,000-year-old dude who knows like every piece and part, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but you have that still in comic books, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
your comic book store owner, their recommendation means a lot. So I think they're going to have to figure out a way, to absorb that print on demand, capability, and they'll have to learn how to curate read lists, that they can make available perhaps directly to their customers, and do a lot more in-store events. But anyway,
Yeah, for
so
sure.
that's so this year we spent a lot of time shepherding people towards that print on demand and how to do that, effectively. We work really closely with Comics Wellspring. Um, they're the ones whose infrastructure is going to actually be doing most of the back end print on demand stuff for indie comic book creators. So I've known and been friends with the CEO since, well, actually, when we first started Lesser Known Comics, I just drove to Michigan and I said, I want to learn everything about your company so that we can play exactly to your strengths and we can print. We want to be the best customer that you have
Nice.
that prints in the way that makes the most of both of our margins. Um, and so that's the first thing we're pointing people towards. I have copies of, I mentioned Rat Brain Zine. So that is a like an indie publisher that we work with a lot, that made these things for us first. They're called the trash cans. So this was actually the first iteration of what um, the lesser known comic zine was. So if you send us a submission, we'll put it in the trash can for you. And this is the trash can. You know, just a black and white, collection of stories. Um, and, uh, it's got, I think 4 stories. So what Max Flowers, the creator of this, was doing was he'd make these and, oh, you have a new book that you want to preview, just like 5 pages from or whatever, put it in the trash can. If you're whatever, you put it in the trash can. And we'd send 25 copies to everybody who contributed to it and say, hey, like, do what you want with these. Like, take them to cons, give them away, like, whatever. Um, and Now it was a lot for one person, for Max to do, by himself.
Yeah.
So we were like, let's do this, because if we could clone Max and we'd follow this through its like logical conclusion, well, in a year, if you go to any con, how many of these would just be floating around tables? And
Uh-huh.
you can't buy that in, like, the cost for that in person like distribution like would be insane.
Yeah.
Um, Now the books don't cost us that much because we do, through Comics Wellspring, we do bulk print orders where, because they're doing digital print, as long as it's all the same paper and it's all the same uh, dimensions, um, printing 25 copies of this and 25 copies of this and 25 copies of this and 25 copies of each of like the books in our lineup. Well, they're all getting them like as if they're printing 2,000 copies.
No, I was gonna say, I was like, yeah, okay, cool.
So that's why we're able to get these zines out everywhere. So what we're taking is Max's idea with the trash can, and we're just like pumping it full of steroids. And the goal is that even if perhaps you're a um, comics is not your main jam, you could have a comic book at your table, at your convention, at the zine fest you go to, on your personal like website or whatever, right? Whatever you want to do with those. Um, the huge part about that as well is um, the amount of times I go to a convention and there's 4 or 5 different creators who have been published in some sort of zine or anthology that Lesser Known Comics has done. So now I say, okay, like I make a sale at the convention. They say, hey, have you checked out Max? He's in this book with us, and I show them that, and Max says, hey, have you seen, Lydia? She's also published, and
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
amount of people who you get sale conversion across, oh yeah, they bought things from everybody in this thing, it goes through the roof.
Yeah.
Um, the ability to have these at when they have what do you call those at conventions where they have the talks? Sorry,
Panels?
panels. Yeah, and we have those as giveaways in the panels, right? And then people show up. They just come right to the booth and they say, "Oh, where's this story from?" Oh, hey, that's that's Jade's story. He's booth over there, you know. Um, that's really the power of it, and I don't think we've fully realized like how much that can do, because Max was doing that by himself for I think 2 years or so. So imagine if we throw 50 creators taking turns being editors, so you don't get burnt out and doing the design, and we partner with Comics Wellspring to get the printing going at a predictable clip. These are.
So I'm wondering, like, the so in that sense, what can be done is basically like everybody that kind of is under the lesser known brand and that maybe contributed to a zine, they're sort of the receiver, they're sort of the distribution channel because you basically can print them at scale. Um, but instead of sending them to shops, you basically send them to the creators involved and be like, you get them out there
And some of
in
them
a
put them in,
sense.
and some of them put them in shops, and it's
Yeah,
better.
exactly. And they could be the ones that actually ship it. That was essentially my idea with my Sacco Press thing. But I had never really built up the network, obviously, of being able to like get them out there. But I was like, what I can do is basically like print a bunch to where it's like cost effective to where if we can at least sell some of them or whatever. um because the biggest hang up is shipping costs. Like you can't profit shipping these things around yourself, because the comic shops, it's not worth it for them to be like, I don't need 20 comics. Definitely don't need more than that. I might need it if you have 20 titles. I might take 10 of each title, and then I can afford to take the box where it's cost effective. But it's like if I'm only doing a certain amount of time, and if I'm trying to ship them myself, like there's like it only will work if I'm basically Tompin, like everybody, and then like you guys are responsible for getting them into your local shops and you're going to your cons and basically selling them. But at the same time, I was like, once again, like at this, it's kind of like, well, now what do I do? To where like I don't want to sell them to the creators and be like, I'll give them to you at like, whatever the price. Because it's like, in the end, it is kind of the hang up of, well, I'm still not really making any money. Like it, it's more of like it's getting the brand out there first. It's almost like the whole setup is like the network effect of getting the brand and the credibility out there and getting people on board. Um, that might not be how you see it, but it's like to me, it was like that was always sort of the I had never like really went heavy on taking action on everything because I couldn't figure out how to any like way to make it cost effective, and I didn't have enough skin in the game, like personally, or enough time really to make it worth doing completely out of pocket. Just to help some of these other creators who I at the time and now I'm like, there's probably better methods to get it out there anyway. Because it's kind of like if you're not good enough to like get like if I don't think you're good enough to be published by someone else, like you're probably just not ready yet for anything at scale. It's like you should just start with a short and a zine and and figure out how this stuff is kind of made. And if you are at the level of you have a quality book and then there's other publishers out there that have better methods of getting it for you in a way that's more beneficial to you than I would be trying to do it just through word of mouth and comic cons.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's part of like the grassroots thing. Because if you sell 75 of these things for $1, you can afford the print run of 75 of an actual, like, you know, professionally printed book. And if you can sell 75 of these, you can get, you can certainly afford to print, 75 of these. I use the
Yeah,
75 as a magic number because that's what it was when because people they were, oh, I have to raise all this money through Kickstarter and I have to, it's like that's not exactly true. Like
yeah,
if you scale up a certain way, you can do it your own, but people want the easy answer. But going back to organizationally, lesser known comics, when I initially started, I didn't know what I was doing, so I formed it as an LLC. This thing, we're in the process of turning it over into a not for profit because we want the board of directors to operate like a not for profit. So the lesser known comics, it doesn't need to make money, it just needs to fund the operating
sustain
costs,
itself.
sustain
Yeah, yeah.
itself. Now, any one of the creators that use it as a platform, they can make that money because that money doesn't go into lesser known comics, hands.
Now, yeah, if you do it that way, it makes total sense. Because, like you said, then you're basically just giving the comics to them at the cost of print, or basically, and it's just like I can get you, yeah, it's like I can get the outreach out there. Yeah, it makes that makes it all make sense. Like if you actually operate under the understanding that it's like we're just like however they do it with like religious texts to where it's like basically it's like donations, like we're printing
Mm-hmm.
the religious texts and we are an organization to try to get, and that's in that case it's like the word of the religious, the But in this, it's like I'm just trying to get your comics out there, guys. Like,
We
there you
joke
go.
about that where we said we joke about that where we said, oh we just turn this into a religion and we should be handing out zines and being like have you heard the good news that
Yes,
you can make indie
yes, that's what
comics.
gospel means. The I'm surprised it hasn't been done before. Gospel
Yeah,
comics, good news
yeah.
comics, or something.
um, yeah, so we operate. That's one of the other things that we're putting into practice this year. So we do have a board of directors. There's about six of us, um, and um, at our first creator huddle, we'll actually have like a vote to like affirm those people, like because they're interim, right now as part of the board of directors. But we want to get to a place where our creators are voting those people into those specific roles to, direct printing, and be the creative director, design lead,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
those things. Um, we have a director of talent development. So those are all you know things where we want people to serve a term, and maybe not do it for a long time. That's a very good developmental program as well for somebody. Not only if they're going to be part of the comics community as a creator, but maybe you know later down the road working for a publisher in some other capacity, right? In some executive role or some sort of whatever role. Oh, hey, I spent time with Lesser Known Comics and I did talent development there, where I was their creative director, I was their lead design. Those are very valuable experiences. We want to grow also the people that are involved, because there's people who know how to make podcasts and know how to plan for conventions and know how to do all these things, plan logistics, like they know how to do all these things, and they're fans of comics, so we want to give people avenues to, get involved even if they're not necessarily making the stories themselves.
That's awesome, man. Um, Dang, yeah, I don't really have any more questions on that front. I think you now I don't, everything makes sense to me. How many titles did you put out before this? Like, but since how many actual like brands of comics, not like the individuals. I guess like we refer to that as titles.
Yeah. I think one of the difficult parts with indie comics is the consistency part, right?
Yeah.
So people make their first comic, say, hey, this is the comic I'm gonna make, and then they go, actually, you know what, this is actually the comic I'm gonna make.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would say it's probably about a dozen that are actually like, hey, they've gone the path and made their trade paperback, or they have a continuous series. Like we have one, it's a horror show that has its own universe where it has short stories in there, and then also has franchised that where creators are making stories under it's a horror show. Um, so and then my one of my you're not allowed, with kids you're not allowed to have favorites, but Tank McGregor, this is Ray Garza, he's our only one that has two graphic novels I think under his belt. This was kind of one of our first like flagship ones.
And are we? What's your at the moment? Where can people get those lesser known titles? Is it through it? If your is your website up to date yet?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
So in the process of taking down the shop, and so we have our first creator huddle of the year in February, and we're going to be discussing, those online platforms. I think for the most part, Comics One and Global Comics are like the two main places to find, the titles that we've put out. What we want to do is set up the website so that people can go and they can see the creator gallery, and those links would be embedded, to their individual shops. Um, the other part for me is anytime they bought a comic from the lesser known comic shop, that's something that I have to do inventory, do bookkeeping, do all those things. It takes away from actually making the comics.
Well,
Uh,
that's where I may be able to help you guys out. Is like I mean, yeah, that's kind of the whole point of ICDB is to streamline from the perspective of you on the back end. It's like we give all the boxes to the creator to fill out to make it easy, and I actually have been in talks with Global Comics, Comixology, some of those guys, um, about making it easy to basically like if you create a profile with ICDB, we make it easy for you to either connect with publishers to where you can like basically if you have a project that's in development and you're looking for people to collaborate with, you can like create a listing that basically is kind of like a job board that says, hey, I'm looking for an artist or I'm looking for a colorist or whatever. Or if you have a completed project, you can sort of be like, hey, I'm looking for a publisher, um, and we can shout that out and put it into newsletters that are directed specifically to the people on SCDB that are publishers and editors and producers. And if kind of all those avenues are either unsuccessful or just not what people want, it's like, well, then you just click uh, print proof and it goes to Comics Wellsprings, and you can get see what it might looks like if you do it yourself. And we give you the forms that tell you exactly how what the specs are that the distributors and printers need, so that
Yeah.
you as a publisher, you're not having to like figure out from the creator, be like, hey, can you give me your creator bios? Can you send me a banner photo? Can you do this? All you do is just say, hey, you know that like whole section that says like print ready file, give me access to that through ICDB, or what, however, like kind of it coordinates within each person's bubble. Like we're still expanding it, but like that is kind of what we're building, and is kind of the infrastructure is already there to where it's like if you're trying to actually, I'm trying to save time on your end, on the back end, by telling the creators exactly what they need to do to make it easy for them to get it up to the professional quality that is needed to make this all work. And if it's not there, sort of like connect you to the people that can help you, like lesser known comics. And I'm trying to be even more like very, as I kind of build out sort of the categorization of people that are on it, I can like talk directly to the people and be like, hey, are you struggling with this thing? Talk to this guy. Oh, are
Hmm.
you at this level, but you just don't have this? Talk to this guy. Like I'm sort of the in between, and ICDB is the tool that like connects them all. And like, and that's sort of that's where we're at with it. And so it's just interesting now to sort of see that like all the struggles that you as a publisher have gone through and all the creators that you've had have gone through is very much like coming to a head. I feel like with the kind of fall and like transition of comics of is like it is sort of there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's really cool to be involved. So I'm just happy to do this. It's been great talking to you. Do you have anything else that you want to bring forth and like shout out or promote or anything before I let you go?
Um, I guess the only thing I would say is, yeah, go lesser known comics. We have the get involved page that right now we only have the one submission opportunity, which is for the zine. But we're already in talks with a bunch of other publishers where that's going to be a landing page just for all sorts of anthologies and other publications, magazines and things like that, where people go there and just go one place and be like, oh, cool, these are all places that I can go to get my work, started. And then, I would always tell everybody, who might be listening is like, don't be a stranger, reach out, Instagram's probably like the best social media platform for us. And yeah, like ask a question, like, hey, I'm trying to do this, what do you have any advice on how to get there? We'll put you in contact with, right people. I think, I think what you're doing with ICDB is a great idea. It's something that we desperately need. Like, every other um, field, whether it's electronics or it's, carpentry, they have standards and practices, right? Where they have like, hey, when you do this, we're all going to use the same format to do this. So it makes it easier for everybody, and what you're doing in terms of having that as a back end where we can just grab like a creator's information and be able to do a creator spotlight really quickly, or to make sure we do the credits and stuff like that within a book or whatever correctly, and have everything hyperlinked. I think there's a huge value added, so I'm excited about that too.
Cool, yeah. Thanks. uh we're getting there, It's like it's a huge undertaking to make that like really functional, especially with like the more people that add on to it. But every single day that like someone new gets added to it, we're learning a bunch, and like everybody's basically like telling us what to do. And it's nice because it's like I don't have to guess what's needed. It's like you're the ones telling me what you need.
Hmm.
But yeah, we'll end it there, man. And take care, and I'll send everybody to your links, and obviously I'll get you onto ICDB and shout you out and everything like that, and we'll figure everything out as we go. Lesser known comics, everybody.